人はいつかそれに名をつけた
Before delving into the subject of the Zhevitz siblings or Sarah, we must first acknowledge the pivotal individual who was fully invested in all of their lives. That very person is Sid Zhevitz, the founder of Zhevitz Enterprise, and father to Ruin and Rudo. Whatever you're going, it's still the same. He was the eldest son of the Zhevitzi, who were nowhere near the affluence that they are now, and grew up with the mindset that carried over into his future business practices. I knew him since he was a boy, raised in the old slums of Kadia, and we were practically inseparable. I was his first and final friend, until the day he passed away. Sid's father was a mess and incorrigible excuse for a man. He was a drunkard renowned for his violent outbursts against his own family, and a barbarous man by nature. His occupation was completely based on opportunism, meaning that there was never a stable source of income to sustain his family. Everything was get rich quick or nothing. One day, when Sid was 9 years old, his rotten opportunistic father leapt at the chance to ship back thousands of sediment stones to Kadia, all which were said to have been completely imbued with purified mana. He was promised a fortune for his services, but never returned to the city or his family. And now Sid, at the age of 9, was left to care for his bedridden mother all by himself. Wow. At that time, Kadia was nothing but a small, poor mining town, and the townspeople could barely survive the winter with the little resources we had available. Many people perished during the winters, especially in the slums where both Sid and myself resided. If only we had some kerosene. That was Sid's only concern. Second to his mother, we did everything we could to care for Sid's mother. Everything within the power of 2 9-year-olds, which didn't amount to much in reality. For 2 years, we labored away, doing any and every odd job available around the town, until Sid's mother's time came. She passed away when we were both 11. Oh, I guess that must be, I forgot what's his name, but the scientist guy, narrator right now. Point of view. It's actually Albas, I forgot to mention, right. The death of his mother had an immediate and profound impact on Sid's perception. From that year onwards, he became angry, bitter, and resentful. But he did not drown himself in sorrow. Not when the world as he knew it was so bleak and hopeless. He realized that, unless he acted and used his personal tragedy as a motivator to become something more, he'd become yet another statistic. Once he was unshackled from his beloved but bedridden mother, Sid found another object of devotion to be chained to for the rest of his life as he knew it: mana. Of all things he could have chosen to pursue, why mana? I asked for myself. Mana was the cause of his father's disappearance, perhaps even death. In fact, if it weren't for the promise of a fast fortune through purified mana, Sid's father might not have gone missing, and Sid wouldn't have had to struggle to care for his mother as much. So, why did Sid pursue the root of all of his misfortunes? Well, one day, while Sid was laboring away in the coal mines, he discovered a fragment of a sediment stone containing a trace amount of colored mana. He found thousands, in fact, and later smuggled them out, without anyone else noticing. He wasn't doing it for the sake of resale, though. He was going to use them for research, which would become the foundation for the remainder of his life. Yowie. Phew, somebody must have upset the foreman today. He was driving us much harder than usual. I'll tell you, Albus, working a coal mine ain't a job for a living. People shouldn't stick their necks out for stupid stones. It barely pays enough to put food on the table either. Gah! I feel nothing but seething sore pain. Regardless of our gripes, we should be grateful to even have employment. Katia is heading into a downward trend, day by day. And this year's winter is supposed to be even worse than the past. I guess we better count our fortunes then, Albus. At least we're stifling and scorched when we're working our butts off. Agreed. Even if I could afford an education, I don't think I'd be able to sit still for a single minute. I learn best when I'm on my toes. Who needs school? Anywho, we're doing just fine on our own, Albus. Haha, I suppose we are. That reminds me, get a good gander at this, Albus. Sid, is that what I think it is? You betcha, it's a sediment stone. It's a pretty crude cut, but it's got some colored mana imbued with it. Where did you find this? Inside the damn coal mine that we work every day, Albus. I think it might actually be a mana mine. Sid, what are you going to do with it? You're not thinking of selling it, are you? Don't you know how Cadians feels about mana crafters? If you're caught selling that stone, they'll throw you in prison. Have some faith, Albus. I wouldn't sell this precious sample, no. It has too much value as research material. Research? I know you won't snitch on me, but to tell you the truth, this ain't the first sediment stone I found in that coal mine. The first sediment stone I found that was like this was no bigger than a speck. The further I dug into that area, the more sediment stones I kept unearthing like gems. I finally struck a cluster of sediment stones. Sid, have you been sneaking them out of the coal mine? Hear me out first. I've got something of great interest to show you later. Stop by my laboratory in an hour or two. What laboratory? Do you mean your house? I'm calling it a laboratory, and I wish you'd call it the same too, Albus. Does the phrase, "let's meet at my place," instill a sense of urgency or mystique? I think not, babe, oh boy. Stop trying to talk like an old fogey, Sid. You need years, wrinkles, and a lot of white hair first. Just stop by later. Why don't I just go over it right now? Oh, well, here's the thing. It's, you know, when my mom passed away, Albie. I thought I'd leave her a flower or two on her grave. It's already the first anniversary. Time flies. Anyways, just meet me at my laboratory in an hour or two. I'll be back and around then. Years after Sid shared his secret with me, we began experimenting with his countless sediment stones in order to find a way to convert the colored mana into purified mana. Even though Sid's father was one rotten bastard, Sid inherited his reckless penchant to dive headfirst into something that piqued his interest. We shared many of those reckless experiments from the comfort of his laboratory. We devoted our youth to researching mana, as if we were driven by some sort of invisible force for a better future. There were times when experiments were wonderful successes, and times when we regretted conducting them. One of those regrets resulted in self-inflicted mana shock syndrome, and caused Sid to temporarily lose all motor functions in his left arm. But one day, we finally succeeded in answering the big question. We had successfully converted colored mana into purified mana. We noted our procedures. We performed the experiment. We made the discovery of the century, and word of our success spread like wildfire throughout the outer pole. We patented our procedure, and we were ready to sell the untapped energies into homes throughout the continent. But we lacked one crucial component to spreading the fruits of our labor. Why, Sid? Tell me why we bother wasting away our years on colored mana conversion if we're not going to sell it. We need investors to spread our groundbreaking research around the outer pole, Sid. We can't even think about expanding until we figure out how to get a consistent and stable output of purified mana out of these filters. If a single sediment stone has a low concentration of colored mana, the energy output through the filter will be equally low. We need to make sure that all sediment stones contain a proportional amount and contain enough colored mana within to outperform a burning candle. Our research is riding on drawing out colored mana from sediment stones, Albus. I'm not talking about the long term yet, Sid. We need to think about now and getting funding in order to expand and perfect our research. Albus, have you heard of electricity before? Electricity? Oh, the electricity generated from lightning bolts. If I recall, I heard that someone from the third sector was trying to harness the very same power. That's right. But that research is still very much in its infancy, and nowhere near ready to be implemented beyond a laboratory setting. I hear the nature of that research is also quite hazardous as well. There's too much uncertainty surrounding the subject. It's under much scrutiny by the board of academics, particularly on the outlook of immediate implementation. Academics academics. I don't believe a word they breathe. If I didn't stumble upon that treasure trove of sediment stones all those years ago, I would have probably pursued the study of electricity as well. Besides, Albus, who's to say that the nature of our research isn't hazardous? Heck, I bet lightning's a much better playmate than natural mana. Depending on the day, lightning might kill you or spare you. Why would you say that? My left arm's been acting up again lately, Albie. Do you feel any intense pain still? It's not the pain that's getting at me. If I had to describe it, sometimes it feels like the flesh on my arm is slowly melting off the bone, like it's been drenched in acid. That can't be right. Has it been that way since you regained control over it? No, it was all good until recently, Albus. I didn't say nothing at first, since it never got in the way of our research and work, but it's been hard to ignore it lately. What could be causing it? I ain't sure, Albie, but for all of our breakthroughs in research in all forms of mana, we still know jack squat about its effect on the human body. We continue our research into solving the proportional division that we observed during purified mana conversions and eventually discovered a solution. It wasn't long before we chanced upon a group of investors who were genuinely interested in our research. We made it through life with dumb luck, I always said, but Sid always encountered with. There ain't no luck out there that's dumb enough to help our sorry butts out. We made this happen. Years passed after our newfound success. Our research was being applied in a real-world scenario, and we both continue to constantly improve on our foundation. In time, those very same investors helped us immensely in the establishment of Zhevitz Enterprise. It was around then when Sid met a girl who had just moved into Kadia. Her name was Eileen Klaslow. Eileen had unnaturally beautiful eyes of emerald, glistening, pearly white skin, and a wonderfully sweet smile. She wouldn't take any sass from a single person, was overly outspoken, and also strong-willed, but she, like Sid's mother, was fragile from birth. Her only wish in the world was to do something beneficial, not just for Kadia or the Outer Pole, but for the whole world. She was a darling woman, if I've ever met one. Her presence alone would give cheer and joy to the people around her. Even people with the toughest exterior would just melt into a puddle at the sound of her sweet voice. But as far as a general populace was concerned, Eileen Klaslow was a goddess in the guise of an angel. And all the while, Zhevitz Enterprise was growing substantially, but we weren't driven by profit. We did our damnedest to save lives during our first winter in Kadia, and made sure that our services was affordable enough to meet that end. Our consumer base wasn't as vast as we expected, but by the end of a harsh winter, almost every one of our customers survived. We left our mark in Kadia in that way. As we bathed in the fame and glory, being hailed as the quellers of the cold, Sid and Eileen's first child was born. Rudo. I never knew a more intelligent child in my life. Nurtured by Eileen's warmth and gifted with Sid's brilliance, Rudo was raised with the best of both worlds. We all lived such happy days, painted with the promise of even better days. If only we had kept our eyes peeled over the horizon and not be blinded by our bountiful boon, so we would have noticed the emergence of the greatest threat to our existence. Sid! Eileen! Do you hear yet? We have competition. Hyvis Corporation. Hyvis? Ain't that the name of the Nimrod that tried to tame lightning before tossing it all out in favor of mana? I've heard about them, but just the rumors. The rumors are true, Eileen. They're using a filter that Sid patented to convert colored mana into purified mana. Shall we pursue litigation for copyright infringement? Nah, leave him be. Those filters are relics. As far as I'm concerned, I ain't got no use for him anymore anyways. But dear, doesn't the fact that they're using your filters mean that they're gunning for you? Hyvis must feel bitter and resentful for his failed research into harnessing lightning. So he's lashing at you, his competition. Huh, sounds like you're a run-of-the-mill short-sighted bastard. He could have stuck to what he put his name and faith in and continue his research, but instead, he's taking a pot shot at our success by diving headfirst into an already full pool. And to think, the bastard has the nerve to use his direct competitor's invention to find his corporation and compete with a tried and true enterprise. When you put it that way, I must give him credit for his complete disregard for the concept of shame. Although, his blind recklessness does remind me of a certain someone. Say what, Albie? I may be a reckless risk-taker, but at least my well of innovation hasn't run dry enough to resort to thieving? Touché. You may be correct to dismiss the trivial matter of the obsolete mana filters. They might just fade out of existence if their aim is to topple us with our old filters. Nobody knows what the future holds, Albus. We're up against a shameless bastard who'd use his competition's own product against them. While Hyvis will never be capable of innovating ever again, don't expect them to die out by the time winter's around. Eileen, what's the matter? You look pale. Sid, I can't explain why, but I just have a bad feeling. What's there to feel bad about? Don't you think that our lives have been going a little too smoothly? Nothing bad has happened to any of us or your company since its establishment. I just feel like this can't be a coincidence. Come on, Eileen. Since when did you turn into such a superstitious worrywart? Neither Albus nor myself has done anything to warrant any worries. We never stole anything, killed anyone, or cursed a single soul. We owe nothing to anyone. I suppose so. Years after making this statement, sweet darling, Eileen gave birth to her daughter, Ruin. That's when our fortunes started turning on us. Hyvis expansion throughout the outer pole exploded, rivaling our company's size within a matter of years. When it came to the know-how of mana, its workings, or our advanced research, there was absolutely no compare. And yet, for some inexplicable reason, they managed to become a real threat to our existence. Nobody, absolutely nobody, could have foreseen their explosive growth. With the availability of purified mana for consumer use from an entity that knows as much about it as it does, lightning, the threat of misuse became a niggling fear. As with the experiment that had gone awry in our youth, causing Sids to experience chronic episodes of pain, mana had once again poised itself against us, and the rest of the inhabitants of the outer pole. We knew little about the effects of natural mana on the human body, aside from mana shock syndrome, and so Sid took precautionary action. Sid convinced our longtime investor to invest a grand sum into the medical field, with a little persuasion to the company's deep-pocketed investors, in order to advance medical research into the profound effects of mana on the human body. Sid, who is now leading medical research, had appointed Eileen as the acting CEO of Zhevitz Enterprise and hired physician in all relevant fields for his newest addition to the company, the Zhevitz Medica Group. The goal of this group would be to attend and serve as the primary care for Zhevitz Enterprise mana mine workers or laborers. Zhevitz Enterprise invested heavily in training procedures and preparatory field cases. However, it would be a good deal of time before any of these healthcare workers would even begin caring for mana mining laborers or sediment stone classifiers. Unlike Zhevitz Corporation, we sought to retain and look after the health of each and every one of our laborers and workers. They were not expendable, unlike the workers being exploited by our competition. Their method of exploitation, while completely ignoring the safety and well-being of their workers, was simple. They employ an immunostimulant known as Process 1 or P1, which contains antibodies to make the user more resistant to the effects of colored mana on the body, allowing them to work through the day and night. The user who were offered the incentive of permanent employment willingly allowed themselves to be injected with regular doses of P1 and would henceforth be known as subjects. Subjects were not only granted with the benefit of immunity to lesser degrees of mana shock syndrome, their bodies were also observed to feature an abnormal increase in muscle mass, as well as bone structure growth, and an additional boost in energy. Zhevitz capitalized on these benefits and employed a large force to constitute the grand majority of their workforce. In a time where work was scarce, and the grand majority of the outer pole was working class, they all flocked over to Zhevitz. They had a firm grasp over the hearts of the people, despite our best efforts to appeal the long-term healthcare provisions for our workers. This was when I saw the specter of Sid's father arise and sway the populace with his unsustainable get-rich-quick creed. Hey, that was horrendous. Tell me about it. I never thought the excessive use of P1 would lead to such a sickening sight. What can one expect from a mind freed of natural fatigue? They become withered shadows of their former selves. Likely, prolonged ingestion of P1 caused the user to build up a tolerance to its mana immunity properties until it became ineffective against mana shock. Zhevitz flooded a local abbey with all of their permanent employees who had succumbed to it. They had to turn away most of the incoming afflicted to a church in the neighboring town. Oh, the irony. That's not all I have to report, Sid. We have another problem. When Eileen, the Medica Programs Director, and myself went to the Abbey and made our proposal to build a new Zhevitz Medica Hospital for general care in the area, the fat friars gave you the stink eye, did they? They assailed us with rather abhorrent, unbecoming things in the names of the Abbey's apostles. The friars blamed us for the calamity that befell the afflicted there, cursing us for committing sacrilege against their mana deities. Even the abbot accused us of being blinded by our pursuit to better people's lives, and the deaths of Zhevitz workers were retribution for our sinful acts. Sinchmin, I cannot discern the veracity of the head priest's allegations, but I am one of the opinion that, as of this moment, our only prerogative is to put our plans for constructing a new hospital in that town into action. Why doesn't the Acadian government outlaw the application of P1 for human trials altogether? It would spare all those poor people from suffering so. Sid, if you could convince the board of academics of P1's danger, then maybe they could convince the government. I doubt that, my dear. Why, Sid, people are dying! Our people! Well, I guess it has something to do with the patented production of P1 on the outer pole. Now, producing the P1 takes a lot of know-how and can only be done by the people who know how to extract colored mana through mechanical means. Otherwise, there is no other means of extraction available to us. So, here's my take on the whole situation. Despite its harmful side effects, the Acadian government can't afford to outlaw P1. Not when they're secretly involved with the exportation of our only domestic product, second to coal. They're in cahoots with Zhevitz, and probably the board of academics for that matter. What? Why would they do that? Isn't it strange how Zhevitz workers suddenly shrivel up, even though they consistently administer P1? A single dose should keep them going for in the entire day. Well, I figured out before Zhevitz give him another dose. They probably extract whatever's left, like how monocrafters extract purified mana. They could probably synthesize even more P1 from daily extractions. Whatever they could be using all these immunostimulants for, though, is anyone's guess. They could use it to give birth to enhance the aggression of their army, or they could even weaponize the damn drug. No. That's just my take on this dreaded mess, my dear. I don't have a lick of evidence to back up my claims. Historically, the worse the situation is, the higher the likelihood your predictions are correct, Sid. Evidence or no evidence. Let's leave the suppositions and trends alone for now, Albie. It's time we get back to the topic at hand. On the issue of forcing our expansion and initiating the construction of a new Zhevitz Medical Hospital, I completely share your sentiment. But Sid, you're forgetting about the perceptions of the public when it comes to house of worship. They'd rather seek salvation than have their lives spared by doctors. Assuming that the current scenario will still be in play, even if you pull through and build a new hospital, the chances that they choose to go to Zhevitz Medica over an overcrowded abbey are slim. You have a point. But why? What did we do to deserve to be brushed aside and distrusted so? If anything, we helped save lives during our first year as a company. Don't people remember that awful winter? If I had to guess, Sid, the fact that we're a private and for-profit company, much like our competition, automatically makes us less trustworthy than an abbey. I'm not opposed to the idea of building a hospital, but given our present circumstances, there's very little point and purpose. What then? What can we do? Sid, I have an idea. What is it? Your theory about the Acadian government being aligned with Zhevitz got me thinking. Why don't we just align ourselves with the Abbey? That way, we could pave the way for the new hospital with their full support. Come again? We'll have to invest in the Abbey first. Perhaps we can purchase new furnishings and even renovate the outdated architecture. We could even name the new hospital after the Abbey. And in exchange, the Zhevitz Medica Group would serve as the hospital administrators. This arrangement would allow Zhevitz Enterprise to retain full ownership of the hospital in exchange for a few concessions. Impressive. The clergy will reign only in name, while their gods govern from above. Hold on just a second, my dear. Now, your plan is very grand and has left me at a loss for words. But what would compel them to want to work with us? They clearly despise everything we represent and stand for. We can do something about that. We can? A few days ago, I heard about the passing of several of the Abbey's sisters after being infected with mana shock by the afflicted they attempted to save. The souls in their care are crazed and violent, and need to be restrained in order to administer treatment. Several sisters died recently because of this. With care and compassion as their only weapon, they tried to reach out to the victims. They did everything they could to provide adequate care to the subjects. Absolutely everything in their power. I propose that the next stage of the Absolute Obedience Automata project be dedicated to the memory of the Abbey's fallen sisters. We should reprogram the automata to prioritize supporting the Abbey's sister in their line of work, and lower the priority of mana dosing. If at all possible, the exterior features should appear more human as well. They will be assigned to guard and protect the sister from any in their care who exhibits severe infectious symptoms stemming from mana shock and P1 fueled aggression. Eileen? That's a spectacular series of ideas, and it just might be within the realm of reason. I'll draw up a new design incorporating these features and submit them to our partners for manufacture. There is a sort of poetic justice to all this. We make a living selling our groundbreaking research, all of which is rooted in science, and yet we must now depend on theologians to survive. Do contrasting ideologies really carry any clout when both parties benefit from finding common ground? Our prerogative now is to care for the victims afflicted with the mana shock syndrome, and to prevent any future cases from occurring. Several days after our impromptu meeting, we all ventured within the confines of the Abbey. Venerable Abbot, we are indebted for being allowed an audience today. Please, my child, I would have done anything for an opportunity to personally welcome the infamous agnostic of Zhevitz Enterprise. Now, Sid Zhevitz, speak your piece, whatever it is that you have to say, or be gone from this house of worship. Several days ago, my wife and co-owner informed me of your Abbey's troubles. Your resources are overwhelming from an influx of mana shock syndrome cases, and some of the Abbey's sisters succumbed after contracting the illness. This is the unfortunate truth. These tragedies were entirely preventable, but both your company and Hyvis sought to blindly compete with each other. Both you and Hyvis have committed blasphemous acts by exploiting the scarce and sacred gift of mana. Knowing now what your misguided devotion to science has bred and wrought upon our homeland, have you any words of repentance that you wish to offer? I have no words to offer in my defense. But on another note, I can say that we are determined to right the wrongs that have been committed by our competitor. If Zhevitz Enterprise were to abandon this mana race, that would compel Hyvis to stop exploiting their workers until they start showing symptoms of mana shock. I can confidently say that we hold ourselves to the highest ethics. We are the good guys here, Abbot. We care about our workers. The nature of your business and Hyvis is one and the same, regardless of your self-perception of innocent. I'm well aware of that. And I want you to be aware that Zhevitz Enterprise cannot afford to back away, not when we're so close to doing some good for Kadia, not while we're so close to bettering the lives of the people for the greater good. Pray tell, Mr. Zhevitz, is there no greater good than the grace of the gods? The genesis of humankind was the very nature of chaos, but from the maelstrom came purpose. Purpose that we should accept with open arms as a mandate from the gods. Commit not sacrilege against our creators, and revere the few gifts they parted ways with. Mana, poisonous in nature, is one such gift from the gods. And yet, ingrates such as Hyvis, the Board of Academics, and even yourself, seek to turn this forbidden fruit into gold through the blasphemous study of science? Perhaps we are all ingrates and should just sit back and accept our roles as laborers, miners, and clergymen in life. However, Venerable Abbot, you forget that our very creators granted us with a paradoxical personality trait. By nature, we are all curious. We're just a bunch of curious creatures. And through the blasphemous study of science, we have learned about the untapped potential of mana. Our curiosity gave birth to science, which in turn has encouraged us all to foster a sense of adventure and ambition. We know that other continents exist beyond the seas, but does the threat of succumbing to mana shock stop us from risking our lives to go explore those lands? We are contradictory, flawed, and stubborn, and yet, Venerable Abbot, these were all the paradoxical personality traits that our creators had bestowed upon us. Blasphemy was a discussion of the schism between the servant of the gods and a blasphemer of science all that you sought from me. No, we actually came to make a suggestion. If this is but more blasphemous words, then I must ask you to leave. We are currently developing machines to assist miners in detecting mana within our mana mines. They will be powered through colored mana. They will be able to receive any commands from its operator, and they will be able to physically carry out those commands. Inconceivable. However, we have decided to temporarily postpone the deployment of these machines. Instead, we would like to donate a batch of these machines to specifically assist the Abbey's sisters when treating the workers from Zhevitz who are afflicted with mana shock. What purpose would it serve you to offer such charity? Venerable Abbot, we would very much like to assist your Abbey. I beg your pardon. Originally, we had planned to construct a new hospital in Kadia, but it's come to my attention that it wouldn't gone unused. People seek salvation not from a hospital ward, but from a house of worship. But let's be honest, your Abbey's resources are overwhelmed by the byproduct of Zhevitz's aggressive aggregation of colored mana and P1 usage. The reality of the situation is grim, and there's no sugarcoating the fact that your Abbey will not be able to save even a quarter of your current total. People afflicted with mana shock syndrome can only be saved through counteractive purified mana treatments, and those treatments can only be performed by people knowledgeable in both mana and medicine. We may share a schism in ideologies, but I believe that we both want to save as many suffering people as possible. Venerable Abbot, we formally request the assistance of your Abbey. If you could personally convince them to be relocated to one of our neighboring or nearby clinics, I'm certain that they will be more receptive to the idea. Intriguing. Aside from our medical branch, they will be attended to by the machines that I described earlier. We are collaborating with a prosthetics manufacturer in order to apply synthetic skin to the units, which would make them appear more human. Nobody will ever know that it's a metallic interior underneath an automaton's exterior. And they will be more than durable enough to handle the most volatile patients. This way, the Abbey sisters won't be subjected to hazardous conduct from their patients. Internally, this work being done on our machines is known as the Sisters Project, in honor of the Abbey's fallen sisters. Venerable Abbot, won't you consider our proposition? Very intriguing. So intriguing that I had almost expected a more veiled proposition from a capitalist of your standing. The Abbey's codes of ethics forbids from entering or even entertaining any offers or requests with non-affiliates. But Abbot, you may hold your peace, Mr. Zhevitz. You need not elaborate any further. But how intriguing it is that you wish to bear the burden of salvation. For someone who sounds relatively indifferent about the matter, Your proposition was rather persuasive. Consider your request granted. You really mean it? I do, but I will not permit the presence of your machines within the confines of this abbey. Why not? If they're around here, then the abbey sister won't be in harm's way. I agree that this situation needs to meet a swift conclusion without any more losses of life to populace or this abbey. But your deep-rooted agnostic ideology makes you blind to the will of the people who come seeking salvation. They desire to be spared from death from the divine, not your mana-powered machinery. No matter how much their human-like skin meshes to their metal exteriors, or how convenient or obedient they will never be human. There is no purpose in gaining salvation from the hands of the lifeless. Was said? Just silenced by a member of the clergy? However, I do condone your efforts to deliver salvation to the suffering. You may use the name of the abbey to begin relocating our current patients to your clinics. Allow me some time to inform convent of my decision. Oh my. How is there a disconnect?
I'm sorry. The bridge became unstable just now.
It did?
I'll restart the process. Just give me some time.
My lady, how are you faring so far, Salpine?
Well,
do you feel okay so far? Is there anything wrong?
yes.
So, which is it?
Gah! This is taking forever. I never thought it'd take so much effort just to stabilize and re-establish the bridge for the mind eye.
Is there a difference between this monocrafter and others like it? Under ideal circumstances, a monocrafter would have the use of a mana line with ample amounts of mana to help stabilize and replenish the user's purified mana. However, this particular monocrafter requires more than the usual required amount for stability, which drains the user's purified mana faster, leaving them fatigued. I find it incredible that even though we three are all humans, only you two may wield the magic of monocrafte. It's almost as if you two were from an entirely different species.
I wouldn't put it that way.
No?
Ultimately, what factors into a future monocrafte is that person upbringing in the vicinity of ample mana lines. If both Britannia and I were to merely remain here, we would lose our tolerance to mana over time and become permanent resident of the outer pole. And then, we would be the exact same as you, Mr. Foster.
I understand now.
If I may, I had a question concerning your visit to the Abbey in Cadia. Do other cities in the outer pole worship mana deities as well?
They do indeed. And on that note, the expansion of Zhevitz Enterprise to most of the corners of the outer pole may all be attributed to Eileen. She was the first to suggest that we should work with Cadian Abbey and build a relationship. I didn't quite believe it at first, but there are a surprising amount of people who place all of their energies in worshipping ethereal deities. That's astounding. During our first day in Cadia, the A pawn shop. That's weird. That's a little bit of typo right here. Or grammar. The A pawn shop owner said that the outer pole was a godforsaken continent, and that the lack of mana lines led to the study of science. That's pretty accurate. And although we have a great contradiction for two schools of thought, religion and science, we're all still capable of coexisting without any issue. People need to devote themselves to one or the other in order to survive. Eventually, you may even end up returning to an abbey or a convent for deities that you may have personally dismissed in the past. I suppose my presumption of the outer pole being more streamlined and less dynamic was completely wrong.
I must say, I really admire both Sid and Eileen Zhevitz for their determination to help the afflicted with mana shock. I feel like there's so much I could learn from them, even now.
As I do, Miss Selfine. My main prerogative focused on the technological front of the business, but Sid and Eileen were always so eager to improve the lives of the people living on the outer pole. Until I lost them both. I never realized the extent of their warm and compassionate embrace for all people. Lost them both? Forgive me, Mr. Foster, but I was under the impression that only Sid Zhevitz passed away. Did Eileen Zhevitz pass away as well? Sadly, yes. Weeks after Ruin's body was discovered by a cargo ship, having succumbed to mana shock herself, Eileen also passed away. You see, Ruin poisoned her own mother before her death. She laced her mother's afternoon cup of tea with a concentrated amount of processed wine.
No!
Eileen was poisoned by her own daughter?
I don't believe it!
Before poisoning Eileen, Ruin had frequently stopped by our branch hospital pharmacy, several times in fact. Evidence collected from the pharmacy indicated that she had smuggled several vials of P1, enough to kill around 10 adults. The peacekeepers of Kadia discovered one vial in the room, but failed to locate the rest. Days later, we discovered that during a crucial meeting, several of our representatives, along with other conglomerate executives from around the outer pole, had all died from P1 poisoning. The incident set back all of our plans to expand Zhevitz Enterprise throughout the outer pole. Had the meeting gone through without any issue, the companies they all represented would have all been merged with Zhevitz Enterprise. I was at a sincere loss for words. What would drive the daughter of such a compassionate and kind woman to poison her own mother? Why would any girl, as young as she was, commit such an atrocity? We did hear of her reputation from a few people, who all describe her as unusually difficult. I believe that may be the only civil way to quote the lady proprietor's description of her.
One person called her Houseborn.
You're almost honest to a fault, Selfine. I find still that label to be highly exaggerated. What was the motive? There has to have been some sort of motivating factor for Ruin to commit such an unthinkable act. Unfortunately, none of the evidence that was gathered was ever indicative of a motive. The only thing that we knew about Ruin was that she was born with an unusual genetic defect. One of the last images that we captured of her cerebral cortex detected an anomaly. The affected division of her brain regulated emotional output and emotional registers. Under normal circumstances, she was never capable of feeling happiness, sadness, anger, or shock. Even though she could absorb and learn information pertaining to emotions, she would never experience them through normal stimuli. As a result, she was bereft of a guilty conscience. Mr. Foster, are you suggesting that Ruin developed destructive tendency because she could not process or register emotions like the rest of us? I can't very well confirm that now, because all of the answers to our questions died with Ruin. The theory of her developing an unrestrained and destructive persona is one that was discussed, but bore no fruit.
Excuse me, I really hate to interrupt, but I've managed to re-establish the bridge.
Are you certain you wish to continue, Miss Selfine? You appear slightly pale.
I am certain.
Are you ready to resume where we last left off?
Yes.
Very well. The next portion concerns Rudo and Ruin. Before we begin, I must warn you both of the disturbing nature of the following events. Are you certain that you want to proceed?
I am, Mr. Foster.